Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. We're going to start ranking these 2026 prospects. Now, before we do this, I want to do an exercise I think you all will very much enjoy, and that is I want to look back at our initial 2025 rankings and see where we were right, where we were wrong about things, and how we can maybe adjust for this year. And I think our main mistake last year was when you're looking at our 2025 tier list, if you could put this on the screen while we talk about it, we didn't really adjust for the strength of the class. Obviously, we had Genty in the S tier. We ended up being right about him. But in the A tier, in a year where there was a strong running back class, all of our running backs we put in the B tier. When in reality, if we would have just flipped the B tier running backs with the A tier quarterbacks, we probably would have been in good shape, because when you're looking at our A tier, Tet McMillan obviously ended up staying there, but Burden didn't. Travis Hunter did, Sanders was out, and Ward should have been a tier lower. So not terrible. The one thing I will point out about our tier list last year is when you're looking at the top three tiers, here are the top, I don't know how many guys to count here. Genty, McMillan, Burden, Sanders, Hunter, Ward, Ibuka, Caleb Johnson, Tyler Warren, Quinshon Judkins, Hampton, and Henderson.
Dang, that's not bad.
Of those top 12, 11 of them ended up going there. Burden kind of, fluctuated a little bit. But what you should learn from that and what you should take into this is we're probably going to get pretty close in the top 10 to 12 of these prospects. And I actually do feel pretty good about the top 10 to 12 of this year's rookie rankings. The couple guys that we missed on last year that were lower down the rankings here, we had Trey Harris low, and he hasn't done anything, so I don't feel bad about that. Colston Loveland should have been higher. Yeah. That was an easy one. Jackson Dart should have been higher. He was a late bloomer,
off-season riser. So.
Yeah, Dylan Sampson and Harold Fannin could have ended up being higher than that. And that's pretty much it. I'm sure there are guys on there that we didn't have at all that should have been on there, and so that obviously you can add that as a miss as well. But again, adjusting this year, I think what we're going to want to do is not elevate quarterbacks so much, even in Superflex League, and elevate the strength of the class. And this year, the strength of the class is wide receiver. You're going to see that reflected in our version 1 of our 26 Dynasty rookie rankings. Again, drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and let's dive into this. S tier here. I went ahead and kept the S tier a little bit more broad, even though Jeremiah Love is probably the safest guy in this class to pick at the 101, and he probably is the favorite to be the 101 consensus. I do think that when you're looking at even, last year per se, Ashton Genty wasn't necessarily the clear-cut 101. There have been plenty of other rookies that have performed as well as Genty has. And I'm willing to say that from a prospect level standpoint, when you're talking about their bakery scores and when you're talking about the projected draft capital, Jordan Tyson is being widely projected in the top 10 at this point of NFL mock drafts where you've seen him, and I agree with that. I think his skill set is that of a receiver that can be very dominant at the NFL level. He's very well-rounded, and I think he can come in and be extremely fantasy productive from day one. Mekhi Lemon, on the other hand, also has a very good bakery score, gets into that, I think, the blue tier when you give him first-round draft capital. These guys are actually in the same tier overall. The difference with Mekhi Lemon is that he's not going to be more of your all-around dominant wide receiver type like a Jordan Tyson does, but he is that type of receiver that is going to be extremely fantasy productive. Doesn't have to be huge, but can win routes anywhere on the field and gets a ton of targets. Those type of receivers have been very fantasy productive recently, and I think that trend is going to continue with Mekhi Lemon. And so all three of these guys for us, when you're looking at the top three of this class, compared to the rankings from last year per se. When you're using just let's use their Z score in the bakery and just kind of figure out the strength of this class. Jeremiah Love would actually be the 101 over Ashton Genty right now. Okay. Jordan Tyson would be the 103, so it would be Love, Genty, and Tyson. Okay. And then you're going to have three players, and then you're going to have Hampton, McMillan, and Dart. And then it would be Boston, Ibuka, and Mekhi Lemon. And so actually Denzel Boston grades very high. We're going to rank Mekhi Lemon a little bit higher just because our film plays a little bit into that. It's not just analytics for us, but Denzel Boston's analytics are becoming very good as well. And we are going to start talking about the next year with a Denzel Boston.
Yeah, Boston has that dream wide receiver build that everybody's looking for in terms of that archetype that you want for a potential alpha wide receiver at the NFL level. We'll see, obviously, how he measures out at the Combine. I'm sure we'll learn a lot more about the measurements for all of these guys in the coming months. But Boston, at 6'4", well over 200 pounds is what he's measuring out to be right now, and getting a ridiculous amount of production this season. Probably going to get close to 1,000 receiving yards. This is a guy that can be very explosive. He has big playability, and he can work the middle of the field as well. I think he's a little more versatile than people give him credit for. This is, I'm very excited to see where Boston ends up landing. Most mocks that we see with Boston involve him being pretty comfortably in the first round. Washington, a very underrated team, very underrated situation this season as well. They got a lot of NFL talent there. We're going to be talking about Jonah Coleman in this video in the coming minutes too. But with Boston, we feel very good about him being solidified as one of the top receivers this season. And right now in the bakery, he is firmly in that green tier. I think he has room to move up as well. Then we have Carnell Tate, who has also been ultra productive this season. He's going to easily eclipse 1,000 yards. Honestly, I'm pretty pumped to see him in person. Avery and I, I'm sure, are going to go see Ohio State and IU in the Big Ten championship game. And Tate, I think we're going to learn a lot more about him this postseason as we expect Ohio State to make another deep run. He had one of the most incredible catches that I've probably ever seen. Definitely one of the better catches among wide receivers this year. If you remember that touchdown catch against Wisconsin. But I mean, his production across the board this year has been phenomenal. Consistent target volume, consistent usage, awesome big playability, 18.2 yards per reception at the moment. And again, at like right now he's listed at 6'3", 195, just under 200 pounds. Like, he has that build to be a potential number one wide receiver at the NFL level as well. I think he's right there with Denzel Boston in terms of skill set. I think that he's going to be a comfortable first round selection heading into 2026. And then the third guy in this tier that we are pumped about is Jonah Coleman. Jonah Coleman, mentioned earlier, playing for Washington. He came back this season, which was a little bit unexpected. We thought there was a good chance that he would declare last year. Decided to run it back, and honestly, I think that's gonna pay off for what his draft stock could be this season, and what's kind of a weaker running back class than what we were blessed to experience last year in the class of 2025. But with Coleman, I mean, I think he's comfortably established himself as the running back 2 in this class, a tier below Jeremiah Love, but still a very high hit rate tier. He's averaged well over 5 yards per carry this season. His receiving work has been, I mean, chef's kiss beautiful. He's had 300 plus receiving yards this season for like 11.7 yards per reception to date. Between his receiving skill set and just his consistent ability to command a bell cow workload on the ground, this is a do-it-all running back that I think someone's going to want to take a shot on day 2, which is going to solidify his status as a very highly touted prospect and in a really good analytical tier in the bakery.
Going to the B tier here, Dante Moore is going to be our first guy. We're going to actually have the 3 quarterbacks. I'll just talk about them all together here. The top 3 quarterbacks right now in most mock drafts, and according to most NFL scouts, are Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, and Ty Simpson. Obviously, Dante Moore has more of your hybrid level quarterback, a little bit more of a dual threat type out of Oregon. Oregon's played a pretty easy schedule this year, and in the game we saw against Indiana, Dante Moore had a couple good throws in that game, but he also did struggle a little bit. So with Dante Moore, I mean, he is somebody I think that has more fantasy upside than some of these last 2 guys here. In Fernando Mendoza playing at IU. With Mendoza, I do think he's probably the most, in terms of if my team was drafting a quarterback, I probably would prefer them to draft Fernando Mendoza from an NFL perspective, just because he looks like he has a legit NFL arm. He looks like he has a legit NFL brain, and he has an NFL build. I think Mendoza is probably the most NFL-ready quarterback here. But for fantasy football, what's that going to look like? It's probably going to look like Jared Goff-ish for that type of production. And that type of production in a rookie draft, it just doesn't move the needle enough for us to say, okay, he's a clear cut above the rest of these guys. Ty Simpson's also kind of in the Mendoza camp in the sense that Ty Simpson has been making some ridiculous throws. Now, you will remember that, guys like Zach Wilson also made ridiculous throws, and they look how that turned out, right? And so, but I will say he's probably a top 3 in the Heisman race at this point, and that is significant as well. He's been very productive, obviously leading a top 5 Alabama team. And so, I think at this point that hype has warranted his first round ranking. He's really been going in the top 5 in most mock drafts here recently in the last couple weeks. And so for now, we're going to keep all these quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are so draft capital dependent and situation dependent that we're just going to put them in here by how they're being projected right now, and then we'll evaluate on our own individual basis later. In the bakery, I will say all 3 of these guys are ranked fairly high at this point. We have a couple position players here as well. Chris Bell from Louisville has had a very good stretch here recently. You saw, obviously, Louisville took down Miami, and Chris Bell was fantastic in that game. Very productive for Chris Bell. Very productive year. And I don't have his most recent his most recent bakery update, but like Chris Bell has been getting first round draft capital. That puts him as the wide receiver 8 in a little bit of an older version of the bakery, but I do think he's going to be a little bit higher here, maybe in the tier with like a Jacoby Lane, Jeremy Bernard, and Eric Singleton Jr. And realistically, if he does get first round draft capital, I'm willing to just take the shot on him early in my rankings because of that draft capital. And so, Bell is more of a Z. He's a guy that lines up out wide most of the time. He doesn't get a ton of targets. He's 220 pounds. And he's 6'2", but he's projected to run a 4.4, so the speed's there as well. We're just going to have to see with Chris Bell. It's going to be draft capital dependent, but since he is being projected right now first round draft capital, I thought it was appropriate to put him here. Justice Haynes transferred from Alabama to Michigan, and this year he's averaging 7.1 yards per carry on the ground. He's been very efficient. He has good size. I think he's 5'11", 210 pounds, if I'm not mistaken. 5'11", 210 pounds. And again, this year, 121 carries for 857 yards and 10 touchdowns. He's been highly productive for a Michigan Wolverines team that has been okay. They're not the Michigan of Jim Harbaugh's day, but I think Justice Haynes has looked really good this year, and he's been very efficient doing it. When you're comparing this year against some of his other years, it's been by far his best year with the most volume and the most efficiency. When talking about his receiving upside as well, this year he only has 13 receptions for 50 yards. That's probably going to be the main red flag for Justice Haynes here, is we typically like to see our running backs have more receiving upside / efficiency than that. But I do think the rushing talent is worth ranking him here at the end of the B tier. And then Kenyon Sadiq. Sadiq could be at the top of this tier. I feel just as confident that he's going to go in the first round as I do any of these other guys. Sadiq, from a bakery grade standpoint, isn't jumping off the page, and I don't think that matters. I think a lot of what people are going to be drafting for is his athleticism. Again, I do think he has a first-round grade on him. I think he's going to go in the first round, and I think he's probably going to go to a situation that, again, he can produce in from year one, and I think that's going to make him very productive. Rookie tight ends tend to be a pretty good investment, so with Sadiq, with the athletic profile, I just don't think he gets the usage at Oregon to bump up his analytical profile. But from a tight end standpoint, I feel like you can kind of see through that a little bit and continue. You're looking at, Aronde Gadsden was in this tier last year. So was Elijah Arroyo. There have been plenty of guys in this tier. Tucker Kraft was in this tier. Plenty of guys in this tight end tier that hit in the last couple of years. And I think part of that is because their college production wasn't good enough. And so with Sadiq, since he is going to go in the first round, I think he's going to be a surefire late first rounder in Dynasty rookie drafts, since the end of the first round this year in Dynasty rookie drafts is going to be a little bit weaker than last year's end of the first round. So we'll have the full bakery posted on the site by the time we post this video. I'll go ahead and put it up. So if you'd like to access the bakery over on the site, plus get a free team blueprint where Nathan and I can look at your Dynasty team, give you advice, give you what moves you should make. Maybe you should be buying rookie picks for this class. Maybe you should be selling your rookie picks. We can help you with that. Go to flockfantasy.com/domain. I've got the link in the pinned comment. Create an account with code domain. The annual Mother Flockature will get you all of the site, the trade calculator, the Dynasty rankings, the bakery, etc. And you're going to get that free team blueprint. So if you'd like to get all the Dynasty resources you need to win the offseason, we'll go ahead and take care of you. Again, links in the pinned comment. Use code domain when you sign up. It's the annual Mother Flocker tier. Let's go to the C1 tier.
Yeah, C1 tier, C2 tier, insert C2 tier, right? We don't care. If you want to flip the C2 tier and the C1 tier, that is totally fine with us. Don't make us think about who we have ranked over who. This is a big bank of players that a lot of them are very draft capital dependent. And it's kind of just wait and see with every single one of these guys. Lenore Sellers in the C1 tier. I mean, I think the biggest question mark with Sellers is he going to declare? And if he declares, obviously we'll talk about, is he worthy of getting first round draft capital, etc. I think he has the skill set to. I think both of us believe he has the skill set to. I think he's not as raw as a guy like AR was coming out, but again, very athletic. The rushing upside is definitely there. Got good arm strength. He needs to work on his accuracy a little bit, but overall, I think the disappointing season that was South Carolina this year might merit him going back. We'll see. But with that rushing upside alone, I think you got to give him his respect here in the C1 tier. I'm a big fan of Sellers if he comes out. Next, we got Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. Look, Eli Stowers is more of like your stereotypical tight end build. As opposed to Kenyon Sadiq, who's a little bit more like undersized. He's kind of a do-it-all type of tight end that can line up really anywhere. He's just super athletic. Stowers is like, I mean, you look at him, you're like, okay, yeah, that's a tight end. And he is a lot more explosive and has way better body control than you would expect for a guy of his size and of his caliber. Athletically, he looks very, very impressive. Again, situationally in Vanderbilt, like his usage is kind of streaky. Like he'll get a ton of targets in a very short span during a game, and then you'll just never hear his name again for like the rest of the day or maybe for an entire week. like production wise, that's just going to be kind of Stowers and his usage there. It's not going to be like Tyler Warren-esque or anything like that. But when you're looking at the bakery tier, he is a tier above everybody else, above Kenyon Sadiq and Max Clare in that green tier firmly. He's got the best grade by far. He's a redshirt senior, so kind of older, a little more experienced, which is, kind of his development throughout college. I think that's definitely shown. He just looks a lot more pro ready than most tight end prospects generally do heading into the NFL. So excited to see what his draft capital ends up being. I think there's a good chance that you're going to see a lot of first round buzz for him as well. Then we got a bank of guys here, a couple of running backs and a wide receiver and then another quarterback. Chris Brazzell has been getting quite a bit of first round buzz just in the mocks that we've been looking at. Analytically, there's nothing really to write home about for him coming out of Tennessee. Obviously, you had like the Dante Thornton buzz last season out of Tennessee. You've seen other wide receivers come out of that situation and they get buzz and then they end up not getting the draft capital that we expect. Because let's be honest, guys, that offense in Tennessee is one of the toughest offenses to scout in terms of like, hey, can they actually translate to an NFL level? Because you can quite literally pitch everything that they do offensively and just throw it away entirely, and you're never going to see that in the NFL ever. Like, it's a disgusting offense to watch. Brazzell does have the skill set and does have the talent to potentially get some good draft capital, and that would obviously increase his stock significantly. And again, his work this season and what he's been able to showcase athletically has been pretty significant. Nick Singleton and Darius Taylor are our next two running backs here. Singleton, we're not ready to like shoot down our boards significantly. Like, we did a decent amount. He went from being a guy that we really liked last season as a prospect. He ended up going back, which was unexpected. And in contrast to Jonah Coleman, where it really paid off, this did not pay off for Nick Singleton, in my opinion. I think Singleton would have gotten better draft capital last year than he might this season, unless you have scouts come in and be like, hey, we can throw away the 2025 tape and go back and look at 2024 when Penn State was actually good. And that's kind of why we're not just making Singleton totally irrelevant in these rankings. Like, I do think we have to give him and Katron Allen a little bit of a break this season. And the reality is Singleton is only going to be knocked so far analytically because of what he was able to showcase at such an early stage at Penn State as a young prospect. He's still not even 22 years old yet. He's firmly in that yellow tier, at the top of that yellow tier right now, with Darius Taylor and Katron Allen and Justice Haynes, who we're all going to talk about here in the C1 and the C2 tier. But the same thing here is going to apply to Darius Taylor out of Minnesota. He's the youngest prospect by far. He's actually not even 20 and a half. Like, he's not even going to be 21 by the time we get to the draft, I don't think, or he may have just turned 21 at that point. No, he won't be 21. He'll turn 21 next summer. So he's going to be a super, super young prospect. He's been a little banged up this season at Minnesota, but from what we've seen this year, it's been everything we thought that Darius Taylor could be, and I think that's a guy that could find himself in day 2 of the NFL draft this season, which would be real solid for a team. I mean, wouldn't you love to see Darius Taylor go to like freaking Minnesota or something? Like, that would be great. Then we got John Mateer here out of Oklahoma, the quarterback there. He's got some incredible arm talent, has been a little banged up this season as well, but since he's come back, again, a guy that if he finds himself in the first round, if someone takes a shot on that arm talent, you saw a guy like Jackson Dart who had good enough arm talent, was able to push the ball downfield, get late first round draft capital. I could easily see that with a guy like John Mateer this year. I mean, he plays SEC football at a high level and is one of the top starting quarterbacks in college football this year. And it's just not talked about very often. So I think once we get to like a lot of deep prospect analysis, not only with us, but just mock drafts that you see coming out, I think you're going to see Mateer sneak into the first round.
All right, let's go to the next tier here and go to the C2 tier. Again, you can flip these guys. I don't know. Casey Concepcion, I want to talk about all these wide receivers kind of together here because him and Jacoby Lane are actually kind of the same type of wide receiver. Both guys that line up out wide most of the time and are mostly deep threats. Casey Concepcion, actually, since he transferred from North Carolina State to Texas A&M, you've seen his average in yards per catch, 8.7 last year on 53 receptions and 15.1 this year. But he has 7 touchdowns this year where he had 6 touchdowns last year. And so you've just seen his ceiling and his deep threat ability kind of come to life in this Texas A&M offense. That's kind of what he is. Jacoby Lane, kind of the same thing. Obviously, playing alongside Mekhi Lemon, he's a great fit because
he plays with Mekhi Lemon.
because Mekhi Lemon can kind of win anywhere on the field, and Jacoby Lane being that field stretcher, that deep threat, has kind of worked out very well for them. Jacoby Lane has very good analytics, it's worth noting. With first-round draft capital, you actually get Jacoby Lane in the same tier as Denzel Boston in the bakery right now, and so he could be somebody that we have to keep an eye on. Again, he's playing at one of the three, universities I'd consider wide receiver U between LSU, Ohio State, and USC. So
he's almost like a better version of Trey Harris.
Yeah, that's about where I'd put him, but I do think he has plenty of question marks with his current profile. Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, I like that he's on a great team in college. I like that he's still producing with Ryan Williams there. I like that, there's a lot I like about him. I like that he's more of a he's not really a deep threat. He's more of a prototypical Z. And he typically, he kind of splits his time between the slot and out wide. I like that as well. The target earning has not been great for him, and the analytical profile is decent. The one thing, the main knock with Concepcion, Lane, and Bernard, and even Surratt, I'll lump in here, is that their analytical profiles, even though they all show a lot of upside and promise as prospects from a talent standpoint and on film, their analytical profiles are pretty bad. They're mid, I should say. They're just not good enough.
They can't really get any higher than the yellow tier. Jeremy Bernard's the only guy that maybe could eclipse that.
And that's kind of the issue at the moment. And maybe some of that, I don't know. Maybe some of that is, with Surratt, for example, that he's been there for 5 years, right? Yeah. But even with that, I don't think that I don't think there's a lot that's going to move this analytical tier up. And so that's kind of the main thing with these wide receivers. They all have a bunch of upside. They just have analytical questions, and so you kind of have to balance that. None of these guys are getting first-round buzz at the moment. I'd say Concepcion's the one guy that may get some first-round buzz. Katron Allen on Penn State. We already talked about Nick Singleton. Allen's been the better running back at Penn State this year, but again, I'm kind of discounting what we're seeing this year at Penn State because of the situation. That being said, when you've seen these two running backs playing together, Nick Singleton has gotten progressively worse, and Katron Allen has gotten progressively better. And typically, you like to see the guy that's getting progressively better when he's coming to the NFL. And so that's kind of the deal with Katron Allen. But again, the situation there is really bad. And then Jadarian Price is actually very interesting, and I think he's moving up our bakery rankings quite a bit. Even with third-round draft capital, he's already sniffing the tier with Singleton, Taylor, Allen, and Haynes. And so I think he could be well in the conversation with all those guys. Obviously, he's playing behind Jeremiah Love right now, which isn't, from in terms of seeing what he can do, it's not necessarily great. However, I do think this guy, when you're watching him, essentially Notre Dame has a 1-2 punch where I think any of these guys can do it, to be honest with you. And so Jadarian Price this year so far, 85 carries for 521 yards and 8 touchdowns. Again, that's as a running back too. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. And then let's look at his receiving upside as well. He's caught legitimately 12 passes in his entire college career. And so literally you're not seeing anything from a receiving standpoint, which is why he's very limited, but I do think he's been very good on the ground, and so it's worth mentioning him here. Again, we'll see with Jadarian Price, but I do think the talent and what you're seeing on film, he pops off the screen when you watch him on film, and I think that's worth mentioning him here as the running back here in this tier. And then Elijah Surratt, I already mentioned. I like Elijah Surratt a lot. My comp for him is Cortland Sutton. I think he's very pro-ready. I think his analytical profile is getting dinged because he played, obviously, at James Madison before he came to IU, and he ended up staying because of NIL and things like that. I think Elijah Surratt has serious NFL potential, and I think one of Surratt or Omar Cooper Jr., who we'll talk about in the D tier here, is going to be a very good NFL wide receiver. You don't have a top 3 team in college football and the receivers being as dominant as they are in the Big Ten without one of them having an NFL career that's very good, in my opinion. I think one of these guys can have a very good NFL career. I think the odds are, just given the history of teams like that one of them will. But Surratt, I really like. Again, he's more of a sideline out of bounds guy, a little bit of a bigger body, but he's a pretty good route runner, and I do think he has very good hands, and so I think that's going to translate to the NFL. So we'll keep an eye on him as we go to the D tier here.
Yeah, Eric Singleton is going to be in the D's tier. I'm just going to be honest here. Don't be shocked if Singleton goes back for another year. Again, in this day and age, it makes sense for a lot of these guys, but Singleton specifically is so young. He just turned 20 years old. And he kind of strikes me as more of a raw prospect. He's not really projected to get ridiculous draft capital at the moment coming out of Auburn. The usage has not been insane this year. I mean, I'd be happy if he ended up getting 600 yards this year. He's a small guy, 5'10", 180. He's not going to be a guy that's just going to dominate you physically. So until the production comes at like a really, really high level, which I think would require like a transfer move for one more year in college to a better team, like we'll see what happens with him. But again, I got to give him his respect here because he does have good analytics. He is super young, very traitsy. He is explosive with his opportunity, very explosive with his opportunity. He's kind of an elite earner. He can command a good amount of target volume despite his size. I don't know if I see it this year for Singleton. We'll see what happens with him. I do want to talk about Omar Cooper, though, because Omar Cooper definitely will be going pro. He's an older prospect, again, similar to Elijah Surratt. His analytics are dinged because he is, going to be 22 years old very soon. But coming out of IU, he's actually ranked over Surratt in the bakery at the moment, and their skill sets could not be more complementary, honestly. Surratt is a guy that can just abuse you on the outside and win contested catches. Very, very poised route runner that I think has become more of a versatile route runner this season. Omar Cooper is kind of an after the catch guy. He reminds me of like he kind of reminds me of Zay Flowers, the way that he moves after the catch. Like when he gets the ball, he can just juke the crap out of like two guys and get an extra 5 to 10 yards just because he's more athletic than you. He shows some really, really good hands on tape. Some people will make a stink about like a drop here or there, which he does showcase on tape as well. But I mean, his highlight catches, again, they're just very Zay Flower-esque, honestly. And similar to Zay Flowers came out a little later, and his analytical profile was dinged because he came out a year later. And again, this is something that we're trying to adjust with NIL at the moment. But I mean, production-wise this season, Cooper has been really reaping the benefits of a Heisman season for Fernando Mendoza. And right now he's just under 700 receiving yards on the year. Don't be surprised if he ends up eclipsing 1,000. I really like Omar Cooper a lot, for as much as I like Elijah Surratt, I think Omar Cooper could kind of fly under the radar because of what Surratt has been doing and the buzz that he's been getting with like true first round buzz. I don't think Omar Cooper will get like first round draft capital, but if he gets second round draft capital, which I do think is well within the range of possibilities for him, I think he's a guy that you might want to keep an eye on. Then we got Max Clare. He's essentially the next guy there in the yellow tier right by Kenyon Sadiq out of Ohio State. You always have a few tight ends who sneak into, they maybe sneak into the first round, or they get that second round draft capital like Terrence Ferguson did last year, and Terrence Ferguson didn't have near the analytical profile that Max Clare has. I like Max Clare. I don't like him as much as I like Stowers and Kenyon Sadiq. I don't think he translates like at a fantasy level immediately like Sadiq and Stowers do, but I do think he does have the skill set long-term to develop and be really solid. Then we got Zachariah Branch. Branch has never been a guy in Georgia that's been like ultra consistently productive. He's just kind of there and he does what you ask him to, and he can have some really big days. He's had the best season by far that he's ever had. And again, at Georgia, I mean, he's had a couple of 100-yard games, very, very explosive in a good situation. I mean, he could have, when it's all said and done after the playoff run, he could have a 800-plus yard season. That's very possible for him. We'll see what happens with him and his buzz, but again, very similar to the rest of these guys, like Surratt and Omar Cooper. He's in that orange tier where draft capital, I think, is ultimately going to dictate where we're comfortable drafting him, where we're comfortable selecting him and ranking him. I mean, if you give him first round draft capital, he only ends up in the yellow tier there. So the analytics aren't super friendly to Branch, production-wise, age-wise. Again, he's fine. He's a true junior, 21 years old. I think he has enough traits to potentially be a riser this offseason, depending on how he tests. Then a couple more wide receivers here. Antonio Williams and Eric McAllister. Antonio Williams coming out of Clemson. I mean, that's been a failed experiment in Clemson with Cade Klubnik and everybody else there. That team is awful. Antonio Williams has been the number one there. He's a senior, 21 years old. He kind of similar to Eric McAllister, who's an older guy as well. He's 22 years old. At TCU, he's honestly been one of the more productive wide receivers in this class. But again, Big 12 football, you kind of want to take all that with a grain of salt because those are all air raid offenses anyways. But again, his usage has been top-notch out of TCU, and you just saw Jack Besh actually get really good draft capital last season out of that offense. So we'll see if McAllister could replicate that this year and get really solid day 2 draft capital.
And then I'm going to wrap it up here with the F tier. A couple of, sleeper, I would say, running backs for this year. I'll start with Damon Claiborne. Both he and Hollywood Smothers, or Smoothers, I think it's Smothers probably, are both kind of, I would say, like I said, sleeper picks. Damon Claiborne's bakery analytics actually aren't bad. I mean, when you're looking at, if you give him third round draft capital, he's in the tier with Haynes, Allen, and Taylor. So he's continued to have a good year. He's a little bit on the skinnier side, and so that's probably his main thing. But we'll see how he tests out at the combine. I think that's going to be big for him. In terms of Hollywood Smothers, I haven't really watched a ton of film on him, but Ryan says that he's a guy that's moving up in the bakery very quickly, and so I had to put him on here as well. Le'Veon Moss, we obviously know, we're very familiar with. We like him. His bakery scores continue to just not be necessarily where we want them to be, and that's kind of
he's
the
banged
main
up
thing.
this year too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Nick Harbor from South Carolina. He's a popular name, but I don't necessarily think that he's going to be an impact rookie for next year.
He's huge.
He is ginormous, but
He's
those
like
guys
6'5",
have
230.
those freaks don't always
They don't
pan
generally
out
do.
very high
Nope.
at a very high rate. Quintrivion Wisner from Texas. You've got Wisner and you've got Baxter there. Both of them have been okay. I think Wisner's got the better analytical profile, and so that's why we're going to put him in here. But it's just going to be a matter of for Wisner. Or is it Wisner or Wisner?
I think it's Wisner.
I'll just redo that. Quintrivion Wisner from Texas. We have, both him and Baxter on our radar, but Wisner has the better analytical profile, and so that's kind of what we're going to mention him here. We'll see. I don't see him getting any higher than 5th round draft capital this year, probably, and then Aaron Anderson as well. Again, all of these guys, Aaron Anderson from LSU, by the way, just a slot receiver, but analytical profile is not very good, and they're just, all these guys are on our radar. So overall, looking at this, year's rankings to start, we actually didn't do this video. I realized during this video, we didn't do this video until December last year. So we're doing it a month earlier this year. Yeah. But I think it's probably worth doing. I think a lot of people want to hear about these guys anyways. And, I think that when you're looking at this year's class, it's much different than it's kind of a hybrid of classes in years past. I think the beginning of the first is going to be still very strong. I think those mid-firsts are where you're probably going to take the hit in terms of you're going to have a fall off this year in the middle tiers / your later tiers. And so early firsts are looking good. Middle, late firsts are looking maybe a little bit less than average, but I think early firsts are a good value in Dynasty. Either way, we're going to continue to monitor this. It looks like a stronger wide receiver class and running back class, so we'll see, and the quarterbacks are going to be the wild card in my opinion. Make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. We're going to continue diving into these guys. We'll continue to bring you content. We have 2 videos coming out every single week, so if you'd like to catch our videos, again, subscribing is the best way to do that. Turn those notifications on. We tend to only do 2 videos a week. We try to focus on quality over quantity. So we appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you here soon.